Let's move on to another genre entirely. Not as difficult to edit perhaps, but definitely harder to shoot. Action. Now, action sequences are much harder to shoot than to edit, which is one reason why editors are sometimes involved in the creation of the storyboards, planning the shots that we will eventually edit together. But whether we pre-edit them through storyboards or edit them after shooting, our goals are the same, to tell the story of the scene as well as possible. We're going to look at a student film called Kamea, directed by Jennifer Akana-Sterla. This film is about a naive, unself-confident Hawaiian teenage girl named Kamea, who falls in love with a surfer boy named Thomas, who is aloof and seemingly out of reach. Despite the duplicity of her best friend, Donnie, she tries to impress him with her surfing, but because she isn't very good at it, she needs to teach herself to surf. By the end of the film, she has learned how to surf, has attracted Thomas's attention, and also learned how to be herself. So that's the logline of the film. Now let's ask ourselves the questions that we've been asking since the first chapter of this course. First, whose film is this? Our logline has identified it as Kamea. It's no surprise that the film is named after her. Next, we ask ourselves for the adjectives that describe Kamea. At the beginning of the film, Kamea is naive, unself-confident, a bit weak, incompetent at surfing, and reliant on her friend Danny. By the end of the film, Kamea has developed a real awareness of who she is, a positive self-confidence, a real capability for surfing, and a strength that she did not have at the beginning of the film. So we're going to look at a scene near the beginning of the film in which she tries to impress Thomas by going out surfing, but she gets washed out and eventually rescued by him, much to her embarrassment. The script to the scene describes Kamea paddling out to the sea, facing the waves, and despite being warned against this by Thomas, being tossed off her board, down into the murk, where she gets tossed about some more, lost in bubbles. Suddenly, she is magically saved by Thomas, who chastises her for surfing at that spot, and Kamea, embarrassed, apologizes and thanks him. And then she returns to the shore all cut up. Before we edit the scene, we would need to figure out what the scene wants, and that means we ask ourselves the questions that lead up to the lean forward moment. First, whose scene is this? Well, that's easy. This is Kamea's scene. She starts the scene lonely and sad that she has no one to talk to about that. When she sees the surfer boys at the beach, she is determined to show off. She ends the scene embarrassed, frustrated, and angry at failing. She is more sad and lonely than before. So where is the lean forward moment in the scene? Well, that would be the moment when she goes from trying for success to knowing she has failed. Let's look at how the scene ended up in the film. Let's notice a few things about this scene that you might find familiar from earlier movies in this course. First, there is a definite difference in the editing pace from the start of the scene to the end. At the moment when she is in most danger, the editing becomes frenetic. But note the three areas where the film slows down. First, where Kamea is staring after Thomas. Second, right after Thomas saves her. And finally, when she looks out at the water after she gets back to the beach. Now, there's no coincidence here. These are exactly the moments where we need to let the audience really feel what's going on in Kamea's mind. At the beginning, at the moment of supreme embarrassment, that's the lean forward moment, and at the end, as we are experiencing just what that embarrassment means to her. But let's talk about the action now. Notice how the director begins that area of the film by dunking the camera under the water. The colors of the image change, the sound changes, and the editing holds on for pretty long on that shot so we can feel the potential danger. That danger is made even more real by the shots that we've seen earlier in the scene of the big waves coming at us. So we are already primed to think danger as soon as the screen gets darker here. Now let's look at the action part of the scene itself. Notice how it is introduced by a giant wave coming over the camera and then followed by eerily colored underwater footage and a very fast edited sequence. In addition, the footage has been sped up and it looks very odd. Many of the shots are confusing and jump cut, and the music changes by adding a drum. It isn't until Thomas comes to rescue her that the pacing slows down and we come back up above the water. The music ends. We are out of danger. So we've seen that editing an action scene is no different than editing any other scene. You need to know whose scene it is, how that person changes, and where that person changes. Then you can build the editing pace, the music, the sound, and all of the filmmaking elements to best show the underlying intent of the scene. And when we do that, we can capture the audience's mind so they understand the story you want to tell.